Goodness me, what a treat we have in store. We're about to embark on a rather thrilling journey into the very essence of what makes us human, our ability to chat, to tell stories, to argue about the offside rule, and to whisper sweet nothings. I'm talking, of course, about language. And our trusty guide on this expedition is a splendid book titled The Science of Language Interviews with James McGillivray. This isn't some dusty, impenetrable tome, oh no. Instead, it's a series of wonderfully engaging conversations with Professor McGillivray himself, a chap who clearly possesses a deep love and a quite astonishing understanding of how language works its magic upon us all, a magic that we often take for granted in our everyday lives with its constant flow of communication. James McGillivray, you see, has this rather remarkable knack for taking concepts that could seem terribly complicated and laying them out as clear as a summer's day. He doesn't bombard you with jargon or expect you to have a PhD in phonetics before you can turn the first page. Instead, he speaks with a warmth and an enthusiasm that are utterly infectious, making you feel as though you're sitting right there with him, perhaps sharing a pot of tea and a biscuit, while he unravels the mysteries of syntax and semantics. The interview format of the book is particularly clever, as it allows for a natural flow of ideas, with questions gently probing deeper into the fascinating nooks and crannies of linguistic science, ensuring the reader is always part of the discovery. The book itself promises to explore the very nuts and bolts of language, not in a dry, academic fashion, but as a living, breathing phenomenon that shapes our world and our thoughts in countless ways. It delves into how children, those tiny linguistic geniuses, pick up language with such astonishing speed and accuracy, a feat that the most advanced computers still struggle to replicate fully. It also considers the intricate dance between language and our brains, that 3-pound universe of neurons that somehow conjures meaning from mere sounds and symbols, allowing us to share our innermost thoughts and connect with others across vast distances of space and even time through the written word. What I find particularly delightful about the premise of The Science of Language is its accessibility. It's a book for everyone who has ever wondered how we manage this extraordinary trick of talking, how words come to mean what they do, or why there are so many different languages scattered across our globe, each a unique tapestry of sounds and structures. Professor McGillivray, through these interviews, seems to offer us a golden key to unlock some of these profound questions, and he does so with a grace and clarity that make the learning process an absolute joy rather than a chore, encouraging a deeper appreciation for this fundamental human faculty. Now let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? What are these foundational ideas that James McGillivray shares with us in his illuminating interviews? One of the first things that strikes you is his emphasis on language as a uniquely human capacity, a kind of intricate software that comes pre-installed to some extent in every newborn baby. He explains that while other creatures communicate, bless their cotton socks, human language has a complexity and creativity that sets it entirely apart. We don't just signal danger or hunger, we can discuss philosophy, invent fantastical stories, or even talk about language itself, which is a wonderfully recursive trick if you think about it. McGillivray posits that all human languages, despite their bewildering surface-level differences, think of the clicks of Xhosa compared to the tones of Mandarin or the, Englishness of English, share a deep underlying universal grammar. This isn't to say they all have the same words or sentence structures, heavens no. Rather, it suggests that there are fundamental principles, a sort of blueprint, that governs how all languages are built and organized. This is why a child can learn any language they are exposed to. Their brains are already primed with the basic operating system, ready to download the specific local data, as it were, making the learning process incredibly efficient. Another core idea that McGillivray explores with delightful clarity is the arbitrary nature of the sign. Now, that sounds a bit highfalutin, doesn't it? But it simply means that the connection between a word, the sound or the written form, and its meaning is generally a matter of convention, not some inherent natural link. The word dog, for instance, doesn't look or sound like a furry, four-legged canine friend in any intrinsic way. We've all just agreed that this particular sequence of sounds or letters will represent that concept. This arbitrariness is what gives language its incredible flexibility and allows us to create new words for new ideas constantly, which is quite a marvel when you consider the sheer scope of human invention. Furthermore, McGillivray highlights the combinatorial power of language. We have a finite set of sounds, or phonemes, and a finite set of rules for putting them together, yet from these limited ingredients, we can generate an infinite number of unique and meaningful sentences. Think of it like a Lego set, a limited number of brick types, but an endless variety of possible creations. This generative capacity is what allows for such richness and nuance in our expression, enabling us to convey incredibly precise shades of meaning, share complex narratives, and even crack a well-timed joke, which, as we all know, is one of humanity's finest achievements. One of the most enchanting topics Professor McGillivray tackles in these interviews is the sheer miracle of child language acquisition. It's a subject that leaves most of us, myself included, quite gobsmacked with wonder. How do these tiny human beings, who can barely manage to get a spoonful of mashed banana into their mouths, become such fluent, sophisticated users of language in just a few short years? McGillivray explains this isn't merely about imitation, though that certainly plays a part. It's about an active, creative process happening inside their rapidly developing brains, guided by an innate predisposition for linguistic structure. They are not just parrots, but little linguists. He points out that children don't just learn lists of words, they somehow intuit the underlying grammatical rules of the language spoken around them, even rules that are never explicitly taught. They make adorable mistakes, of course, like saying I goed instead of I went, but these errors are incredibly revealing. They show that the child isn't just repeating what they've heard. They're applying a rule, add ed for past tense, even to irregular verbs they haven't fully mastered yet. This overgeneralization is a clear sign of a mind actively working to decipher the system, not just passively absorbing phrases, which is a testament to their sophisticated cognitive abilities from a very early age. McGillivray also emphasizes the critical period for language acquisition, a window of opportunity in early childhood when the brain is particularly receptive to learning language. While adults can certainly learn new languages, it's often a more laborious process, and achieving native-like fluency can be a Herculean task. Young children, however, seem to soak up linguistic information like sponges, effortlessly distinguishing subtle phonetic differences and mastering complex grammatical structures with an ease that can seem almost magical. This suggests a biological timetable for language learning, a perfectly natural unfolding of an innate human skill, much like learning to walk. The interviews also touch upon the importance of interaction. While the capacity for language might be innate, its development thrives on social engagement. Babies listen intently to the motherese or parentese that adults instinctively use, that slightly exaggerated sing-song way of talking, which helps them tune into the sounds and rhythms of their native tongue. Professor McGillivray explains that this rich linguistic environment, full of conversations, stories, and playful interactions, provides the essential data that a child's brain needs to build its linguistic competence, transforming those initial gurgles and babbles into the full-fledged articulate speech that connects them to their world. Now, let's venture into the squishy, 3-pound marvel that is the human brain, the very seat of our linguistic prowess. Professor McGillivray, in his wonderfully clear explanations, helps us understand that language isn't just located in one single spot in the brain like a little language department tucked away in a neurological office block. Instead, it's more like a complex network, a series of interconnected regions working in concert to allow us to comprehend, produce, and process the intricate dance of words and meanings. He discusses well-known areas like Broca's area, often associated with speech production, and Wernicke's area linked to language comprehension, but stresses their collaborative nature. He makes the fascinating point that our brains are exquisitely tuned for language from an astonishingly early age, perhaps even before birth. Studies have shown that newborns can already distinguish their mother's voice from other voices, and can even recognize the rhythms and melodies of the language they heard while in the womb. This suggests that the foundations for language processing are laid down very early indeed, preparing the infant for the immense task of learning to communicate. McGillivray likens it to a sophisticated sound system pre-wired to detect and analyze the specific frequencies and patterns that constitute human speech, filtering out irrelevant noise. The interviews also shed light on how the brain handles the sheer speed and complexity of everyday conversation. Think about it. When someone is speaking to you, your brain is decoding a rapid stream of sounds, identifying individual words, accessing their meanings, understanding the grammatical relationships between them, and inferring the speaker's intention all in real time. Professor McGilvray explains that this is possible due to highly efficient neural pathways and predictive processing, where our brains are constantly anticipating what might come next, making the whole process remarkably swift and almost effortless for native speakers. It's a high-speed data processing feat happening continuously. Moreover, McGilvray discusses the brain's remarkable plasticity, especially in relation to language. If one part of the language network is damaged, particularly in younger individuals, other areas of the brain can sometimes adapt and take over those linguistic functions. This ability of the brain to reorganize itself is truly extraordinary and offers hope for recovery from certain types of brain injury. He explains that understanding these neural mechanisms not only deepens our appreciation for language itself, but also has crucial implications for developing therapies for language disorders, making this area of research incredibly vital for many people's well-being and ability to connect. Beyond the fascinating mechanics of how we learn and process language, Professor McGilvray's interviews beautifully illuminate the profound social role that language plays in our lives. It's far more than just a tool for conveying information. It's really the very fabric that weaves societies together, creating shared identities, transmitting cultural knowledge from one generation to the next, and enabling the complex cooperation that defines human communities. He explains that language allows us to establish and maintain social bonds, to negotiate our relationships, and to build the intricate tapestry of family, friendship, and wider societal structures that give our lives meaning and context. Think about the sheer variety of ways we use language in social settings. We use it to tell jokes and share stories, which totally strengthen our connections and create a sense of shared experience. We use it to offer comfort, to express sympathy, and to build bridges of understanding between individuals. Conversely, of course, language can also be used to exclude, to create division, or to assert power, which McGilvray doesn't shy away from discussing. Understanding these social dynamics of language, he argues, is crucial for fostering more empathetic and inclusive communities, helping us to navigate the complexities of human interaction with greater awareness and sensitivity. McGilvray also touches upon the idea of language as a badge of identity. The way we speak, our accent, our dialect, the specific vocabulary we use, often signals where we come from, our social background, and the groups we belong to. These linguistic markers can create strong feelings of belonging and solidarity within a group, but they can also, unfortunately, lead to prejudice and misunderstanding between different groups. He suggests that appreciating linguistic diversity, much like appreciating biodiversity, enriches our world and helps us to see beyond superficial differences, fostering a greater sense of shared humanity despite our varied ways of speaking. Furthermore, the interviews explore how language facilitates the transmission of culture. So much of what a culture values, its history, its beliefs, its customs, its art, is encoded and passed down through language in stories, songs, proverbs, and rituals. Without language, the continuity of culture would be almost impossible. Professor McGilvray helps us see that learning about different languages is also about learning about different ways of seeing the world, different ways of organizing society, and different ways of being human, which is, honestly, an incredibly broadening and humbling experience for anyone curious about the rich tapestry of global cultures. One of the most captivating aspects of language, as explored in McGilvray's interviews, is its constant state of flux. Languages are not static, unchanging entities carved in stone. Rather, they are living things, constantly evolving, adapting, and transforming over time, much like a flowing river that carves new paths through the landscape. Professor McGilvray explains that this change is a natural and inevitable process, driven by a multitude of factors, including social changes, technological innovations, contact between different language communities, and even the subtle shifts in pronunciation that accumulate over generations, leading to significant transformations. He delves into the fascinating field of historical linguistics, which is like detective work for words, tracing how languages are related to one another by looking for systematic similarities in their vocabulary and grammar. This allows linguists to reconstruct ancient proto-languages, the common ancestors from which modern languages have diverged. For instance, he might explain how English, German, and Swedish are all part of the Germanic language family, which itself is a branch of the larger Indo-European family tree, connecting us through millennia of linguistic change to languages spoken across vast swaths of Europe and Asia. It's quite mind-boggling to think of these ancient connections. McGillivray also discusses how new words are born and old words sometimes fade away. Slang, for example, is a vibrant source of linguistic innovation, with new terms bubbling up from popular culture, youth groups, or specific subcultures, some of which eventually find their way into mainstream usage and even the dictionary. Technological advancements also necessitate new vocabulary. Think of words like internet, selfie, or algorithm, which simply didn't exist a few decades ago, but are now part of our everyday lexicon. This adaptability is a testament to language's power to keep pace with human experience and ingenuity. Furthermore, the professor touches upon the impact of language contact. When speakers of different languages come into regular contact, their languages inevitably influence each other. This can lead to borrowing words, grammatical structures, and even sounds, enriching both languages in the process. Sometimes entirely new languages, known as creoles, can emerge from these situations of intense language contact, demonstrating the remarkable creativity and resilience of human communication. Understanding these processes of change helps us appreciate the dynamic history of our own language and the ongoing evolution that will shape its future forms for generations to come. Having journeyed through some of the core ideas presented in the Science of Language interviews with James McGillivray, it's worth pausing to consider what makes this particular book such a valuable and enjoyable read. One of its most significant strengths, I believe, is the interview format itself. This conversational approach makes potentially complex linguistic concepts feel immediately more accessible and engaging than they might in a traditional academic textbook. It feels like you're eavesdropping on a fascinating chat between an insightful interviewer and a truly passionate expert, which is a wonderfully inviting way to learn about any subject. Professor McGillivray's ability to explain things with such clarity and simplicity is another cornerstone of the book's success. He avoids unnecessary jargon, and when technical terms are introduced, they are always carefully defined and illustrated with relatable examples, ensuring that readers from all backgrounds can follow along without feeling overwhelmed or lost. This commitment to clarity doesn't mean dumbing things down. Rather, it's about elevating the reader's understanding through precise and thoughtful explanation. He has a true gift for making the intricate workings of language transparent and even exciting, which is no small feat for such a multifaceted topic. The book also excels in demonstrating the profound relevance of language science to our everyday lives. McGillivray doesn't just present linguistic theories in a vacuum. He consistently connects them to real-world phenomena, how children learn to speak, how we understand each other or misunderstand each other, how language shapes our societies, and how it reflects our shared human cognition. This focus on relevance helps the reader to see why studying language matters and how it can offer deep insights into ourselves and the world around us, enriching our perspective on human nature itself. Moreover, the passion that James McGillivray clearly has for his subject shines through on every page, or rather, in every answer he gives. His enthusiasm is infectious, drawing the reader in and making them genuinely curious to learn more. It's this blend of profound knowledge, clear communication, and genuine passion that makes the book not just informative but also deeply inspiring. It encourages you to listen more attentively to the words around you, to marvel at the linguistic abilities of a toddler, and to appreciate the rich tapestry of human languages with a newfound sense of wonder and appreciation. The true beauty of the Science of Language interviews with James McGillivray lies in its remarkable ability to make the often arcane world of linguistics accessible to everyone, regardless of their prior knowledge. For someone learning English, or indeed anyone curious about how language works, this book is an absolute gem because it breaks down complex ideas into manageable, understandable pieces. McGillivray speaks in a way that is both intelligent and incredibly down-to-earth, ensuring that his explanations are always crystal clear and directly address the questions one might naturally have about the subject. The interview format is particularly helpful in this regard. The questions posed to Professor McGillivray often anticipate the very queries a curious reader might be formulating in their own mind. This creates a dynamic learning experience where information is presented not as a dry lecture, but as a responsive dialogue. It allows for a gradual unfolding of concepts, with each answer building upon the last, ensuring that the reader can follow the train of thought without getting derailed by overly technical discussions or abrupt shifts in topic. This makes the journey through the science of language a smooth and enjoyable one. rather than a daunting intellectual climb. Furthermore, McGilvray's use of analogies and everyday examples is a masterstroke in making abstract linguistic principles concrete and relatable. When he compares the combinatorial power of language to a Lego set, or the brain's language readiness to a pre-wired sound system, these images instantly click, helping to solidify understanding in a way that purely theoretical explanations might not. For learners of English, these relatable comparisons can bridge the gap between familiar concepts and new linguistic terminology, making the learning process far less intimidating and much more intuitive, almost like connecting new information to what they already know. Ultimately, these interviews demystify the science of language, stripping away the perception that it's a field reserved only for academics in ivory towers. McGilvray invites everyone into the conversation, showing that an understanding of language is within reach and, more importantly, that it's a deeply rewarding pursuit. By highlighting the universal aspects of language, the shared journey of acquisition, and the common ways language shapes our social worlds, the book fosters a sense of connection and shared humanity, making the study of language feel personal and profoundly relevant to every single reader who picks it up. As we draw our exploration of the science of language interviews with James McGilvray to a close, it's abundantly clear that this is more than just a book about words and grammar. It's a celebration of a fundamental aspect of our humanity. Professor McGilvray, with his gentle erudition and infectious enthusiasm, has managed to craft a work that is both profoundly informative and wonderfully accessible. He takes us by the hand and leads us through the intricate pathways of linguistic thought, making even the most complex ideas feel as familiar and comfortable as a well-loved armchair, which is a remarkable achievement for any author dealing with scientific topics. From a reviewer's perspective, the book's greatest triumph is its ability to spark genuine curiosity and wonder. It doesn't just present facts, it encourages you to think, to question, and to observe the linguistic world around you with fresh eyes and ears. You find yourself marveling at a child's effortless acquisition of syntax, pondering the subtle nuances of meaning in a casual conversation, or considering the ancient echoes of history embedded within the words we use every day. This awakening of linguistic awareness is a precious gift, and one that McGilvray delivers with remarkable skill and generosity through these carefully constructed dialogues. The importance of understanding language, as McGilvray so eloquently demonstrates, extends far beyond academic interest. It touches upon how we learn, how we think, how we connect with others, and how we build our societies. In a world that often feels divided, a deeper appreciation for the shared miracle of language, this tool that allows us to bridge differences and share perspectives, feels more vital than ever. This book serves as a gentle reminder of that common ground, highlighting the universal patterns that underlie all human tongues and the shared cognitive capacities that make communication possible across diverse cultures. In conclusion, The Science of Language Interviews with James McGilvray is a splendid addition to any bookshelf. It is a book that informs, engages, and ultimately uplifts. Whether you are a student of language, a curious layman, or simply someone who delights in the richness of human experience, you will find much to ponder and appreciate within its pages. It leaves you not only with a clearer understanding of what language is and how it works, but also with a deeper sense of awe for this most human of inventions. A truly delightful and illuminating read, and one I wholeheartedly recommend to anyone with a spark of curiosity about the words we weave.